Good morning, everyone. Continuation on postcolonial criticism. Postcolonial criticism. Uh, Now we discussed the three stages uh, about which we have the different stances on the part of the writers, like adapt, and adapt. Three stages and the features, and how you can connect it with the three phases of female literary tradition. We had to discuss that, and we discussed it in detail. Now you can read the stress on cross cultural interactions, whether in the area of writing or any other interactive sector. You can see a cross cultural gathering, cross cultural provision, like interaction, mingling, interchanging of cultural values, characteristic features. Like you see, a language is one part of this cross cultural interaction. We cannot say that we are Malayalis, we will never speak English. And even English, they adopted, they took many of the terms, they brought it into, they took it as part of their language, like chutneyfication is a concept. How does it come? As when once they are coming to the land, Indian land, some of the Indian languages, some of their terms at least, they take. That's what they term learn words. So learning words from different other languages. So this cross-cultural interaction is part and parcel of a colonial establishment. It's mutual. It's not just it's not unidirectional, like only from Britain to British culture or West imperial culture to the colonized, but from colonized land to the colonizers as well. We can interchange a lot of features, lot of characteristics, lifestyle, everything. So the fourth characteristic itself of postcolonialist criticism. How does it happen? What is the relevance of this cross-cultural interaction? You know what is meant by cross-cultural interaction there. And part of that, this notion of the double or divided or fluid identity. With that, you can see how the double or divided or fluid identity, especially you can see it in the case of, you can take the example of America was once a colony of certain other imperialist nations, but now it is one of the emerging imperial powers. And how an American can take this double or divided identity. Like once, to talk about I'm an American, if a person says that he is an American or she is an American, are you a post-colonialist or a colonialist? Do you have the history to talk about a colonization or colonized experience or colonizing experience? There is an identity, fluid identity there. Even think about India. To talk about in official terms, India is a post-colonial nation. We never had the experience of colonizing others. But think about the multiple citizen, their situations and their situation as such in Indian context. Where to talk about Indians in general, all of us are post-colonial. We had the history of colonization. We had the experience of the bad experience of colonization, at least our ancestors, if not directly. But think about the sect in India who are rich like anything, in whom the major part of the wealth of the nation is getting accumulated. We used to say like that, like the problem, major economic crisis in India, all this poverty report, poverty statistics of poverty, and the hunger deaths. This happened because the major portion of the wealth of the nation is getting accumulated in a very less percentage of people. Those who are rich in India are highly rich. Those who are poor also stay the same. They are poor. Their situation is it's beyond our imagination. We have at least food and clothing, everything. But those who are living without all these, their situation is beyond our imagination. So there is no balance in between in the distribution of wealth. That's why India cannot come in the statistics reports or statistics calculation in its economic stability, economic achievement regarding all this. You cannot always praise Indian economy in that way because of this unlikely distribution of wealth. So in that regard, just think about it. Every Indian to talk about its post-colonial, but post-colonial as an identity, if you think it's about the experience of being colonized, exploited, with erased identity, denied individuality. But we know for sure how many Indians are there who are actually on regarding caste-based discrimination. All of us are Indians, but we are not united in that regard as such when you talk about the higher caste, lower caste issues. Even without having any of this concern, people distinguish each other like you are black, you are white, oh that white girl, that black girl, black boy, white boy. From where do you get all these ideas? Where do you get all these nasty ideas? Who told you that only white is good? This is the kind of conditioning that we got from somewhere, and we could never throw away as well. And this is what you mean by this double, divided, fluid identity. Just because of being part of the once colonized nation, you cannot always say that I hold all the feeling of a post-colonial. If you are a casteist, if you are talking against the people, if you are praising, if you are preferring untouchability again, you are never holding the features of being a post-colonial. It's a feeling actually that yes, once we were exploited and no longer we want that exploitation. We want to promote, we would like to promote that exploitative way. We never want to deny humanity on grounds of any label, like lower caste, higher caste, black, white, all these binaries we want to erase if you have true genuine feeling and concern of being a post-colonial. Yes, we were exploited once. Our history got erased because of this. Yes, lack of unity. So no longer that should happen. That should be the concern of every post-colonial if you are truly concerned about. Then explains the great attraction which post-structuralist and deconstruction have proved to be for the post-colonial critic. And these new emerging theories like post-structuralism, deconstruction, these the post-colonial critic they are much attracted towards these these critical theoretical practices like post-structuralism, deconstruction. What must be the reason? Think about the possible reason for that. Everywhere deconstruction goes for the challenging of binary oppositions, where you have the tendency to talk about black white, high low, and deconstruction, one of the major features itself is to oppose the binary opposites, like you deliberately, you might have come across the deliberate reversing of this binary opposites, like white black. You saw in the example for deconstructive criticism, deconstruction, we came across that. Instead of day, the writer prefers dark, and dark was already attached, dark gets already attached, dark is taken to be very bad usually. Night instead of day is preferred, and the poet asserts that during night all the enthusiastic lifelike activities take place. There you are challenging that established binary. In the same way, when you sing like Karuppinalagu, you are opposing that binary. You used to assert or used to think that white is only beautiful. But now we deliberately compose such songs or ideas we try to disseminate through literature, through other cultural whatever cultural ideas, certain other ideas regarding the importance. Or yes, black is also beautiful. White may be beautiful, black also. If white is beautiful, black too is beautiful. Have you noticed that recent ad of a famous toothpaste, where you see a woman? Actually, I think it's very deliberate on their part. Very recent advertisement in which, not that fair. That woman who is portrayed in that advertisement is not that fair. Actually, being the advertisement for a toothpaste, her smile is highlighted. That's fine. But still, we even in that case, we used to see the selection of the featuring person based on their skin color, skin tone. But here you can see comparatively she's not that fair, not that white. And you portray that as part of beauty. Now just smile again that if they are concerned about skin color, then that skin tone must be white. But that advertisement is a kind of deconstruction in that regard. If you want, you can take it in that way. But there may be nuances, there may be loopholes, but still to talk in terms of this concern, that can be taken as a step to deconstruct that obsession with the white. And even one of the Indian fairness creams, they changed their brand name itself, for the sake of, actually they declared it. Instead of fair and lovely, we use glow and lovely or something. That's what they are declared. Because fair, why should it be fair for you to be lovely? No, you glow and lovely, that's fine. If they declare it on their own, that's really truly a very appreciable step. Still, the concept of such fairness creams, it's still there, so that these surface level revolutions, but even that can be taken as a positive step. That's all. That's the purpose of your applying a cream on your face. The question is still there. Unless and until some creams come in the market which is for your skin to be black, and if you are daring enough for that, that can be taken as a revolution. Otherwise it's there in name, but still that at least that is there. That's a positive move. And that's why this post-structuralism, deconstruction, all these ideas or that their techniques become really relevant in post-colonial criticism as well. They can try with their steps towards deconstructing or thinking differently can be taken for granted, taken or applied in post-colonial criticism as well. Same with the case of feminism. They also take a lot of ideas, techniques from post-structuralism and deconstruction. Like man, woman. Instead of that, you write woman, man. There you are applying deconstructive technique of reversing the binary, challenging the binary. Instead of just writing he. I will tell you. A student gets promoted to second semester if he clears. This was the way we used to have it in syllabus. But once we went for the syllabus revision, we deliberately added she or he, S/HE. Means it's an approved way of writing now. Not just with the Jamian syllabus, not just with our campus, but everywhere you can represent the woman. That is again a challenging in writing. And deliberately it's she after he. We know that's again a binary opposition. Binary opposition you are reversing. Binary opposite you are reversing. It's deliberate on our part. Yes. And post-structuralism is centrally concerned to show the fluid and unstable nature of personal and gender identity, the shifting, polyvalent, contradictory currents of signification within texts. Everywhere post-structuralism, every time it is trying to prove all these polyvalent, shifting identities. Colonialists, they say that we are good, we are better, we are cultured, and these colonized people, they are good for nothing, they are barbarous, cultureless. But we have techniques in post-structuralism deconstruction where you can challenge, you can find out the loopholes. When they portray something as very good, better on their part, with a deeper level reading, a post-structuralist critic can find out how nasty, how nullified it is, how invalid their claims are, and that's their task. So definitely, post-colonial critics, they make use of the post-structuralist and deconstructive techniques. So contradictory currents of signification within texts. And the way literature itself is a site on which ideological struggles are acted out. Where literature is a site on which ideological struggles. You might have you are studying, you have this essay, Image of Africa, the reading on Heart of Darkness, actually an imperialist text, the Image of Africa in Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. The essayist is Chinua Achebe, one of the post-colonial writers, and how this essayist finds out the imperialist identity, how it comes out in the portrayal of Africans in Heart of Darkness. When you read the text, you may not feel like that if you are not reading it seriously. with a post-colonial eye, at least with the feeling of a human. How dangerously you get the representation of Africans. You feel like they are very dangerous and threatening figures. See the way the terms used by this imperialist writer, his imperialist identity, his ideologies, everything comes out while representing Africa. And in not just in one writing, most of their writings used it to communicate or used it to portray the Africans or such other colonized nations and the subjects there in this way itself. And this is dangerous through their writings, through their portrayals. Even in the 21st century, once we read, we feel, oh, Africans are like that. They are always of an attacking kind. They are very problematic masses. They are not approachable. This is the notion they are disseminating through their writings. You feel like, oh, it's a novel. But once they write as if they witness it, they experience it. They are traveling in the ship. They are traveling through their area. And always they are worried, as if they are very pacified, calm and cool, quiet people. Actually, they are going on trade, going for trade, and their own characteristic their own problems in between. How one is trying to cheat the other, or how yes. How much ideologies are there in between, or how these people themselves are not truly genuine and sincere in between. They are part of a company, but they are going to find out the person. The narrator, Marlowe, Kurtz, all of them. Kurtz, the ivory trade. And they are very dangerous journey. Their journey is portrayed to be very dangerous just because of the presence of these Africans. But you know how much the company manager, his ideologies, his cunning character, the cunning characters in between, the betrayers, all of them are there. But only the cruelty of Africans are getting highlighted, or mostly majority of the most part of the every part. You can see this Africans and their attacking nature is getting highlighted, and such portrayals give such idea or emphasize this kind of ideas. Like Africans or any colonized people, the people of the colonies are good for nothing. They are attacking, they are violent masses. You get these ideas again and again communicated and asserted through such literature. That's why literature itself is a site on which ideological struggles are acted out. See, this is an ideological struggle of the writer. He is holding such a notion. We are talking about Heart of Darkness. The writer himself is an imperial person. He holds the identity of an imperialist. His education, his growing up in the within the colonial land. All these make him conditioned to think, behave right in that way. So that is acting out, that ideological struggles are always acting out when they write, when they sit down to write. This expressing this mindset is admirably suited to expressing the numerous contradictions and multiple allegiances of which the postcolonial writer and critic is constantly aware. So postcolonial writer and critic, they should be aware of, always aware and vigilant of such possibilities. When you sit down to read the novel, the any of the artistic or creative writings or whatever on the part of a colonial writer, you should not read as if you are reading a storybook with all the in a relaxed manner, relaxed mood. You should be very vigilant to find out, to see wherever and whichever space, whichever spots you can locate the ideologies, the negative impressions of the writer, the colonial writer, when they portray, or they may be very deliberate on their part to portray the Indians or the Africans or any other colonized subjects in a very barbarous, negative, giving them very negative picture, negative attributes like cultureless, cultured, see they are not cultured, sensuous, violent, illiterate. All these features they try to assert through different characterization. So this is your task, the post-colonial critics, their task to find out and to criticize them for such portrayals. Actually, all Indians are not like this, or even during that time we were not like that. We remained illiterate because you didn't give us chance for education. You gave education in a selective manner. You allotted education. You allowed education for minority, a very selected minority, and even that was for your own purpose of serving in different offices of yours. Not as part of educating Indians. Now by our constitution, the rule of Indian government, we have compulsory education up to a particular standard, particular level. That is part of the development of the nation. That is the aim. Obviously, whenever you have some precepts, you have an aim for that. If it is part of your constitution, the constitution of any nation, but think about the education provided by the Britishers in India or any other colonized lands. Their goal was different. They wanted a very less number of people to be educated, and that itself was serving their officers, serving their official purpose, for the sake of their own official purposes. So now everything has to be found out, to be recognized by the post-colonial critic. That is very important. That is very important. This post-structuralist perspective is seen in the work of such representative figures as Henry Louis Gates Jr., Gayatri Spivak, and Homi Bhabha. Gayatri Spivak, her relevant essay, very famous essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? Subaltern as a term, and many other ideas by Homi Bhabha. You will have to get those as the terms at least. As part of post-colonial studies. Spivak's essay, very famous but tough essay, still the ideas, at least it's very relevant to be known. Like Gayatri Spivak's Can the Subaltern Speak? She talks about the privileged sector within the post-colonial identity, within the post-colonial, yes, exactly about Indian context you can think. To talk about, it's about post-colonial, everyone of us is a post-colonial. But there you have higher caste people who are more privileged and an underprivileged section because of their low caste identity or financial instability. And can actually the subaltern speak because of this differences? It's a very relevant question as far as, especially as far as Indian context is concerned. You don't have a unity in your own identity as a post-colonial. The Indians as such, you cannot say that every Indian is raising their voice as after having the feeling of a post-colonial, because being a privileged person, you don't even think about the underprivileged sector. The people who die of hunger, die because of the nutrition deficiency, without having food and water and clothing. How many of these privileged people in India itself, while holding the identity of a post-colonial just for the namesake, label sake, they hold that identity, but they are not aware of that. They are not aware of the kind of life lived by such underprivileged sector. And you all call that you all are Indians. So can actually the subaltern speak within the sector of multiplicity? Your situation is not the same as the other one situation. Your financial status is not equivalent to others. That equivalency cannot be achieved at any point. But this kind of a vast difference in the accumulation of wealth and lack of possessing anything is very huge. It's a crisis as far as Indian economy is concerned. That's why this question, can the subaltern speak, becomes very relevant. In all three of these, you can see in three of these major figures, a complex Derridian Foucauldian notion of textuality and fields of discourse. Textuality, you already know the notion. The meaning potential of a text. That's what you mean by textuality. And fields of discourse is immediately apparent. Foucault, it's power relations. Main idea is power. It's everywhere. Power is everywhere. And your manufacturing consent. You yourself give away to that. When you say like, oh, it's Indian product, I don't want that, I want that other, like imported products. And you prefer that, unknowingly or unknowingly, you subscribe to that meme. You are again promoting a discourse of colonialist regarding textuality. So every text of theirs, like whatever is written by the colonialist about India, about Africa, is to be reconsidered, reread with the eye of a post-colonial. Similarly, in all three, the surface of the writing is difficult and the route through to any consequent political action or stance even is necessarily indirect. The surface of the writing is difficult and the route through to any consequent political action is necessarily indirect. This kind of postcolonial criticism roughly corresponds then to the theoretized French feminist criticism associated with the figures like Julia Kristeva or Helene Cixous. What does it mean? Surface of the writing is difficult Okay, you take a post-colonial writing, a colonial writing, a writing on the part of a colonized master. If you read this Heart of Darkness with the ease with which you read Jungle Book, oh, it's about a story. It's if you read Heart of Darkness and say or describe it to your friend like, oh, it's a story, it's a beautiful story about a person going the exploration adventures in some of the rivers in Africa, wherever. You don't even mention Africa. There he meets a lot of problematic people. Very adventurous journey it is. If you read it in this kind with this kind of a silly and naive reading mindset, you are never taken to its surface reading, and it is not going to take you anywhere. To find out the loopholes, to find out the problems in colonial writers' ideology, how colonial ideology is function, working out in that characterization, how problematic it is. You don't see that, you fail to see that if you move in a surface way of reading or approaching a text. And at least sometimes this political action, sometimes it can be indirect. Indirect in the sense, if you can write back. You can see the text even with the empire writes back in the way you can write back. They portrayed us to be in this way. But you are erasing that, you are denying that, you are opposing such portrayals, and you are portraying yourself to be the better, and the colonial writers, colonialists to be the worst. Their exploitation in India, their exploitation of the African masses. Everything you try to highlight in your writings, that can be an indirect way of attacking. Political action. It should not be always the protests on roads. Through your writings, through your speeches, public speeches, you can communicate, you can challenge the colonial ideologies. Yes. So, this kind of postcolonial criticism roughly corresponds then to the theoretized French feminist criticism associated with figures like Julia Kristeva or Hélène Cixous. You learn about them in feminist criticism and their ideas, some of their ideas. If you want, you can connect with the postcolonial. At present, I don't want to go to that because we have to talk a lot about the major figures like Edward Said and many other important critics and their ideas under postcolonialism. As you have this theory feminism to be discussed as part of your syllabus, you learn about these major writers, the major critics there itself. Okay. And try to have a connection, try to get connected with this, all these new theories, modern literary theories are immediately or interchangeably connected. You know how post-structuralist ideas, deconstructive techniques can be made use in postcolonial reading. Now, the example of postcolonial criticism offered later is from the work of Edward Said, who is less overtly theoretical. So, in feminism, post-colonialism, every such emerging theories which are fighting against exploitation, you can see a sector of them, like you take feminists or if you take post-colonialists, you can find a few of them. If you take a group of feminists, if you take 10 of them, if you have 10 of them gathering here, you can see at least 5 of them are supporting direct action instead of theorizing and saying all these problems. You are numbering and you are listing out the problems, you are discussing it. Instead, at least 5 of them prefer direct action, like you are going for riots, you are going for political protests. And obviously Showalter's essay itself begins in that way, or at least communicates this idea. Too much of theory will pull down action. That's what you as a sector of feminists feel and believe. Some of them believe in the action only. We don't want to theorize it more. We don't have to waste our time theorizing these things. In the same way, you can find out postcolonial critics as well. So what is it? What do you mean by this? Edward Said, who is less overtly theoretical. Overt and covert. Covert means in a covered manner. Overt means you are openly. So less overtly theoretical means overtly is already there, not covered. So he is directly less overtly theoretical means Edward Said is obviously he prefers theorizing the problems, and obviously it's clear with the publication of many texts in this area. He would like to, or many others who are overtly theoretical, they came up with their ideas, they narrated, they wrote down their ideas, they published books on this. So that also is very important. Action in itself, that is over, but later to get these actions, their implications, those history of exploitation, suffering, everything to be available, you need at least a bit of theory. We fought when we had to do, when this political action was demanded out. That time is over, and later at a time period when you look back, you don't have any authentic details. So such theoretical books also are very important. As we have the theoretical books, theoretical writings, or this theory, the criticism and theory available, we can see, we can draw the trajectories of feminism, the trajectories of post-colonialism. You talk about first wave, second wave, third wave feminism and all. Why this is third phase? Why it's not just feminism but first wave feminism, second wave feminism? Why it evolved in that way? What was problematic about first wave feminism? What was missing in second wave feminism? And what is better, preferable about third wave feminism? What are the problems in third wave feminism? If you want to assess, if you want to analyze all these, you should have an idea what this, and again you get all those from theory books itself. Seems to accept some of the premises of liberal humanism, but he also at times you can see him taking the premises of liberal humanism. Liberal humanism, to talk about liberal humanism is a very to put it very simply, liberal humanist approach is you take a lot of tenets of a particular theory. Say for example, you value and you bring it into practice some of the ideas of feminism, you just assume. But you never ever prefer yourself to be called a feminist. In that regard, you are a liberal humanist. You don't want labels. You take a lot of Marxian ideas and you practice it in your life. You are against working class exploitation. you are against exploitation of any kind, and you take all these ideas from Marxist scientific theory, but you never would like to call yourself a Marxist. But you come across a lot of people who label them as Marxists or feminist. In that regard, you are not a liberal humanist. But other part, liberal humanism ultimately actually is about you practice, you bring ideas from you take for granted, you practice some of the ideas of different theories, different movements available, but you never label yourself as such. So Edward said, but he theorized, he's a non-critique of post-colonial. He's a very prominent figure in post-colonial literature, post-colonial studies, and has a more upfront political affiliation. Upfront political affiliation. You can see upfront political affiliation means he in his book Orientalism, identification with the Palestinian Arab cause. The book talks about the problem of problems of Oriental thought, where Arabs, Islams are exploited, their identity, how this Western imperial thought used to put a very negative label on Arab or Islam identity, how Islamophobia is problematic. All these ideas he communicates very openly in his book, Edward Said's Orientalism. In the very introductory chapter itself, he discusses all these. So it's an upfront. He declares his identifying with the Palestinian Arab cause. His work his work is in this regard reminiscent of the Anglo-American variety of feminist criticism, which likewise seems more overtly political and certainly more immediately accessible. So to talk about your affiliation, directly say like, yes, I am this, I support them, I support that or this. So it's immediately accessible. If a person says like, yes, I am okay, I support that, but still you might have come across people in that way also. Your politicians in your area know that yes, you have a positive attitude towards, or yes, their votes are for this party. There is no doubt for that. And you never join their processions, their meetings, nothing. So that you are not really accessible to them. But they know for sure that yes, you are supporter of the party, at least by your heart. That way also you can be. So but here when Edward Said, he directly writes about his support for such a cause like Arab-Palestinian issue. He becomes more accessible. Okay, so his work is in this regard reminiscent of the Anglo-American variety of feminist criticism, which likewise seems to me in this way. Here it's about the writer of this text, more overtly political and certainly more immediately accessible. So with that we stop now, and the 3 stages adopt, adapt, adapt shall be dealt in the next session in more detail. Okay, we have to deal with many other theories of this area as well under this title. After that, we will go to stop and think session. Thank you.